Hello.
Hello,
I have a question for you.
my son. Yes, Martin.
So, it occurs to me that in the spiritual path, in the desire to take one's life and have it be more fulfilling and meaningful, one has to be very dedicated and sort of disciplined, and sometimes you even have to dedicate yourself to a certain amount of personal sacrifice, to let go of vices, to stand away from temptation, or simply to follow a doctrine that means something to you. And these are all very adult things. And yet, in most religions and in spiritual sort of observations generally, it seems to me, and I think you'll agree, that among the most spiritually profound observations and states of being are those in children. Those that come from the child's mind and the child's actions that are pure, that don't come from a place of past regrets or experiences or expectations. How do you advise those of us who are adults, who are trying to be more intentionally spiritual in our lives and derive meaning from that? How do you advise us to balance these two conflicting observations?
The conflict is between
The necessity of being studious, diligent, perhaps a little bit of self-sacrificing, and the desire to be, or
Right.
the fact that innately the most spiritual depths, or the deepest spiritual meaning can often be found in a very childlike nature.
Yes, all true. One of the things adults do with all that doctrine and discipline and rigorous practice is try to become more like children. I can think of no clearer statement than the one that's made in the gospel, when Jesus says, "I tell you truly, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven unless you change and become as little children." Little children. And yes, that's on one hand a call to innocence, and it's a call to openness, and all that's true. But think about little children and the way they see the world. They see the world immediately for what it is. They don't bring to it the weight of experience and things they've read in school and things they've been told and questions to weigh. They see it immediately for what it is. And seeing the world immediately for what it is, in its reality, is what the spiritual path is all about anyway. So yes, we do all those things, and they're all important. But the point is to become like little children and see the world as it is and be part of that world.
Mm-hmm. What is there any practical advice you could give to someone struggling with that is generally good for pretty much anyone, right? Obviously, everyone in their own individual journey could use specific advice, and that's something that they'll need to find in a case-by-case basis. But something that you've witnessed that adults struggle with,
Yes, I think there's often a conflict in adults when they sense intuitively something that should be done or said, or a move that needs to be made, or some counsel that they give their children, and they stop themselves because they're not sure it agrees with the social doctrine or the religious milieu or whatever, and they keep themselves from doing that. And I think generally, if people would trust themselves a little more and would have more of an open, flexible, I don't want to say honest because it's too charged a word, but a doctrine, a life and a practice and a relationship with their children that is not constrained by these things, I think their intuition will serve them a lot better, and they'll be a lot more helpful in conveying what they want to convey. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's nothing more powerful to children than the example of their parents.
Right. Last question. Do you think that having and raising a child helped you to instruct you on how to be more childlike, or in your adulthood, do you feel that you rely mostly on your memories of childhood in terms of?
No, I think, speaking personally, and that I can't give a categorical answer here, the things that I learned about childhood were much more clear and memorable in raising a child mm-hmm. than in trying to remember my past, because the examples were clear and stood out for me, and a lot of things are difficult to remember when I was a young child. Mm-hmm. I think these things are one of the reasons they often say the child is father to the parents, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's not a required part of the path, obviously, but I found it incisive and helpful.
So maybe then the thing that adults could do to help themselves is, if not raise children, at the very least spend more time with children.
I think that would be very good. And not only that, there's a lot of research, very current research, on what's called the grandmother effect. And that demonstrates that older people who spend time with children live longer. Mm-hmm. That's science. But we all know that.
Yeah. Thank you.